I built a multi-million-dollar rap empire and became a legend in West Coast hip-hop, but I still ended up going bankrupt.
This is Pocket Watching with JT.
Hey, Pocket Watchers, I am certified financial planner Jayson Thornton, and this is the Bankruptcy Breakdown. This is where I react to the financial failures of your favorite celebrities and influencers so you can get the financial lesson without going through the trouble. Let's go pocket watching. On this episode, I will be reacting to the bankruptcy filing of Suge Knight and Death Row Records. But before I dig into the numbers, let's give this brother his flowers. Marion Suge Knight was born and raised in Compton, California. He first made himself known to his community as a superstar athlete, earning a scholarship to the University of Nevada. He even briefly played in the NFL with the Los Angeles Rams during the 1987 NFL strike year. Now, when he transitioned from being an athlete to the music industry, his very first step was in the role of a bodyguard. Yes, he was the bodyguard of different superstars who would come into the Los Angeles area, namely the one and only Bobby Brown. Now, he would then find a way to transition from being the bodyguard of artists to being the business manager of artists. One of the biggest parts of this transition was the story you are about to hear. Now, there are conflicting narratives of what actually happened, but this is the most popular story. Suge Knight became the business manager of a man who claimed that he was the ghostwriter of Vanilla Ice's huge record, Ice Ice Baby. Now, apparently he had proof that he was the ghostwriter of this record, but instead of going the normal legal route, Suge Knight stepped in to secure his royalties. As the story goes, Suge Knight then strong-armed Vanilla Ice into signing away his rights to the song over to his clients. Now, this may not have happened the way that the story goes, but it doesn't matter. Suge Knight loved the narrative that went out, that he was a mob-like figure in the hip-hop industry. That reputation actually follows him through decades, even to this day, that Suge Knight is the godfather figure in West Coast hip-hop. If you want something done on the West Coast dealing with hip-hop, you had to go through him. Now, he then transitioned from being the businessman of artists to becoming the co-founder of Death Row Records with the one and only Dr. Dre. Now, if you were not around in the early 90s, you have no idea how big of a movement Death Row Records was. So let me help you a little bit. Now, Dr. Dre was coming off of his huge success with Eazy-E and Ruthless Records, right? He is one of the co-founding members of NWA. You would figure that would be enough, but no, because of conflicts with contracts and royalties with Ruthless Records, he decided to move on, start his own thing with Suge Knight, and it was Death Row Records. Death Row Records had to have been the soundtrack of urban America in the early 1990s. Let me simply name off a few of the highlights when it came to Death Row Records. In 1992, Dr. Dre released his album, The Chronic, that went triple platinum, not once, not twice, but triple platinum, and it redefined the sound of hip hop. Then, the very next year, In 1993, Snoop Dogg then drops his debut album, Doggy Style. It became the fastest selling debut album in history at that time. Then in 1995, Suge Knight then posts the bail of $1.4 million to get Tupac out of prison, which then gave us the Diamond Certified Classic, All Eyes on Me. At its peak in the mid 90s, Death Row Records was generating over $100 million a year. So, how do we end up here? How do we end up on the Bankruptcy Breakdown? Well, apparently, on April the 4th, 2006, Marion Knight Jr., aka Suge Knight, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in the Central District of California. Now, just to be clear, for those who are unaware, there's different types of bankruptcy. Most people, when they hear the word bankrupt, they think of Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Chapter 7 bankruptcy is total liquidation bankruptcy. That is where the court allows you to keep certain assets, things that are considered exempt assets. But the court then takes control of all the assets that are not exempt. They take control of the assets, they sell them off, they then try to pay off the people who you owe money to as much as possible, and you walk away with a fresh start. Not with a whole lot of assets, but you are able to walk away with a fresh start. That is not the type of bankruptcy that Suge Knight filed. He filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. This is a reorganization type of bankruptcy, a payment plan type of bankruptcy. With this Chapter 11, you are able to set up a payment plan between 3 to 5 years. It gives you an opportunity to bring all your creditors, the people who you owe money to the negotiating table. You set up a payment plan, and at the end of the 5-year payment plan, all of the debt that is unsecured, that has not yet been paid off, goes away. Okay? That is the type of bankruptcy that he filed. The question is why? Why did he file for bankruptcy? Well, one of the leading factors of why he filed for bankruptcy was a judgment that he received. Now, he was in a legal battle with Linda Harris. Well, who is Linda Harris? Well, more importantly, we should be asking, who is Linda Harris and who is her husband? Well, Linda Harris was the wife of Michael Harry O. Harris. Now, according to the authorities, Michael Harry O. Harris was a Los Angeles entrepreneur, but also a drug kingpin. In the late 1980s, he was serving a 28-year prison sentence for what? For drug trafficking and attempted murder. Now, according to the story, Harry O, through his wife Linda, were the initial investors in the into Death Row Records. They claimed that they had the seed money of $1.5 million. Okay, $1.5 million. Now, Harry O was in prison at this time, so he did it through his wife. This is how the story goes. Now, Linda claims that as Death Row Records began to get more successful and more successful, Suge Knight started to push her out of the company, not giving her her fair 50% of the profits. So she took him to court, right? Took him to court for her fair share of the company. According to the paperwork, in 2005, a Los Angeles judge ordered Knight to pay Mrs. Harris $107 million. Now, I want to make a note here that during the trial, Suge Knight was requested to provide certain financial documents. He did not provide those financial documents. And that's what led to the judgment of $107 million. So this is why it's very important that you have your bookkeeping in order, your personal bookkeeping, making sure that you have a budget in your personal life. And if you have a business, you have to have your financial life in order and have the books clean, or you can end up in this situation as well. So the $107 million judgment is one of the key reasons that Suge Knight went into Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Why? When you file for bankruptcy, you receive what's referred to as an automatic stay. An automatic stay is when the court says you have to put pause on all your collection activity. It makes all of the creditors, the people who you owe money to, they have to stop trying to aggressively collect on that debt, and they have to come to the negotiation table, and hopefully you can come up with a payment plan over 3 to 5 years that can get everyone in order. So that was a smart move by Suge Knight to file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Gave him the ability to hold off on this $107 million judgment and get a little bit of breathing room. Well, what ended up happening in this bankruptcy? Where did it go? All right. So, according to the paperwork, Mr. Suge Knight was earning absolutely no money in 2006. That seems a bit odd. Now, he put down on the paperwork that he was a music producer, but he claimed no active monthly take-home pay. Now, the problem is that when the trustee actually combed through the personal financial situation of Mr. Knight, he discovered that the man was living a lifestyle that cost roughly $30,000 a month. So where was the money coming from? If you said that you were bringing home no take-home pay, how are you able to provide for a $30,000 a month? And remember, this is the this is the early 2000s, right? This is the early 2000s. So $30,000 a month in 2006 is a whole lot more money than 2026. All right. So where is this money coming from? Well, they didn't know where the money was coming from, but they knew where the money was going. Based on the bankruptcy filing, we see that a lot of the costs that was going out of the window was alimony and child support. $24,700 a month was going towards the various women that he had children with and those kids. $2,000 was going towards food. $1,200 was going to clothing a month, which is crazy. Utilities, $780 a month for his telephone, and $600 on transportation. All right, let's talk about these assets. What did he own? Well, according to the bankruptcy filing, they felt like his assets were a little suspiciously high. But based on what he reported, he said that his total reported assets were $4,428,011. Well, where is it coming from? Well, he claimed that he had absolutely no real estate in his own name, that he had no interest in his Malibu or his Las Vegas properties. All right, stating that they were in foreclosure at the time. All right. He claimed that he had intellectual property of $4.4 million in the copyrights and publishing of Death Row Records. Now, he also claimed to have some depreciating assets. Now, remember, appreciating assets are things that go up in value after you buy them. Depreciating assets are things that go down in value after you buy them. He claimed to have personal jewelry worth $25,000. He also claimed to have clothing that was worth $1,000. But I thought you were spending $1,200 a month on clothes. Maybe the clothes was for his children, because the clothes that he had on his back apparently was worth only $1,000. And he had furnitures and appliances worth $2,000. Seems a bit odd, but okay, I guess we can go with that. Now, what about traditional investments? Stocks, bonds, mutual funds? Well, most of his interests were in various companies like Big Simon Says, Blood Money Entertainment, and Death Row Records. But he also reported that he had about $11 in a Washington Mutual checking account. Seems a bit odd for a music mogul, but okay. Let's now talk about the debts. He claimed to have debt over $130 million. All right, $137,451,276. Now, the biggest part of that debt was the judgment to Linda Harris, $107 million. But he also owed back taxes to the IRS and to the state of California. And he also had legal fees over $1 million that he owed. Now, if we take a look at the numbers and we try to give this man a 50-30-20 budget. What is that, JT? A 50-30-20 budget is a budget that if you simply split up your money into three buckets, you have 50% of your money going towards your needs. 30% of your money goes towards your wants, the fun money, and 20% of your money goes towards saving and investing. If you are able to do that, trust me, you will not go bankrupt. But if Mr. Knight was able to do that, what type of money would he have to have and produce each and every month to be able to support the lifestyle that he had? Well, his needs, based on the bankruptcy filing, were about $30,000 a month. Well, that would mean he would have to be bringing in almost $60,000 a month, $59,760 a month. That way, it would support a 50% of $29,880 a month. He could then also have his wants, the fund money, $17,928 a month, and he could comfortably save and invest $11,952. Now, the problem is the man was short all of it. He claimed he didn't make any money. He was short the $59,760 a month. Now, that annual income after tax would be around $717,120 a year. Now, that's not too bad for a music mogul, but for a man that claimed he was making no money a month, that's extremely hard to do. All right. So let's put all of this together. We have a man that has built up a multi-million-dollar empire. He got hit with a $107 million lawsuit. He files for Chapter 11 bankruptcy to get this judgment off his back, to set up some sort of payment arrangement, or even contest the debt that they say that he owed. So what ended up happening? Well, when the court looked into his financial situation, they discovered a mess. Yes, they said that his reported asset that Knight claimed to have been between $0 to $50,000. That's all the assets that he had. That was made up of jewelry and cars and real estate, but his debts were over $100 million. Seems a bit odd. There were allegations of fraud. The court-appointed trustee accused Mr. Suge Knight of gross mismanagement of the funds. Said that he was shifting money from here to there to different shell companies, trying to hide his assets. That is a no-no when it comes to bankruptcy. Listen, either don't file the bankruptcy, right, and do whatever you want to do, but you cannot file the bankruptcy and then try to hide assets. It's always going to end bad for you. Okay. So what did the court decide to do? Well, the court decided they're going to transition this Chapter 11 bankruptcy into a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. The major difference here is that in a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, the court takes control of the assets. In Chapter 11, he was still in charge of the company, doing what he needed to do, right? But in Chapter 7, you have to turn over the keys to the kingdom. All right. In July of 2006, a federal judge ordered a mandatory trustee takeover, citing that Knight's failure to provide accurate financial records was the issue. By 2008, the case was converted to a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Now, the goal isn't to set up a payment plan. The goal is to take control of the assets, sell off all the parts, and try to get the creditors paid off as much as possible. So let's take a look and see what happened here. We have the selling of the Death Row Records catalog, an unbelievable history of hip hop music that should be in a museum somewhere. It got sold off to Wide Awake Entertainment for $18 million. That Malibu mansion was bought by a private buyer for the amount of $4.5 million. All right. So the keys of the kingdom were turned over to the court. The different pieces of that empire was sold off. But at least you can say, well, hey, Suge Knight had to give up Death Row Records. Everything got sold off, but at least the people who filed the lawsuit, Harry O and his wife, at least they got the money, right? At least all of this Black excellence was transitioned from one Black man to another Black man. At least we can say that, right? Well, the answer would be no. The answer would be no. Even though Harry O and his wife were the biggest creditors of Suge Knight at the amazing number of $107 million, even though they were the ones who were owed the biggest amount of money, guess what? They were not the ones that got the money. Of course not. Of course not. Who were the winners and losers of this bankruptcy? Well, the number one winners of this bankruptcy was the actual bankruptcy court. The trustees and the legal fees to actually handle this bankruptcy, they got the biggest slice of the pie. They got $8.8 million in administrative fees. The next winners was the IRS. Now remember, there's different types of debt, okay? There is priority debt, there's secured debt, then there's unsecured debt, okay? The IRS, right? The government, the federal government, the state government, they are priority creditors, okay? Now, the court is always going to pay themselves first. The court and the trustees, they're going to get paid. But when you talk about owing debts to the government, they are right next in line. So the IRS got $3 million. The state of California got over $300,000. And even local taxes to the LA County Treasurer, they got $36,000. Okay. They were the winners. Now, there were some other people who got paid. Some of the people who got paid was Tupac, the estate of Affinity Secure. She got $130,000 plus. There were some other people who got some money too. I believe Michelle A., who was an artist on death row, and also the ex-wife of Suge Knight, or at least one of the ex-wives of Suge Knight. She reportedly got $6,000 for priority support claim, and even his accountants got almost $4,000. Now, who were the losers of this bankruptcy? Well, the big name losers of this bankruptcy, number one, was Linda Harris and Harry O. They got absolutely no money. They got absolutely no money, even though their judgment of $107 million was the key reason why Suge Knight and Death Row Records went into bankruptcy. They got no money. Who also got no money? Dr. Dre. Dr. Dre claimed that he was owed about $8 million in royalties that didn't go to him. He got no money. Nate Dogg, classic Nate Dogg with all of those hooks and all of those songs. He claimed that he was owed $5 million in unpaid royalties. He got nothing. Even Snoop Dogg himself claimed that he was owed $2 million in unpaid royalties, and he got absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. So not only that, not only did the Death Row empire fall apart and the money didn't even go to the so-called initial investors, we have a man that continued to find himself in trouble. Yes, we have a man, Suge Knight, that absolutely blew a bag. And he's in jail right now, not because of his mismanagement of the money, but just because of his mismanagement of his life. Now, listen here. Apparently, in and around the 2020s, we have Suge Knight, a grown man, clearly in his 50s, is serving a 28-year prison sentence. For what? For voluntary manslaughter. Got into a hit and run, not from a stranger, a hit and run from a man that he has known for years. A hit and run that left him behind bars for 28 years. It looks like his earliest opportunity for parole is October of 2034. My God, here he goes. Now listen, you may not be a multi-millionaire hip-hop mogul, but you may have financial problems in your life, and I am here to try to help you avoid going bankrupt like Mr. Knight. How can you do that? Well, you can follow the Pocket Watcher 7 money rules. Yes, the 7 money rules of the Pocket Watcher can keep you out of financial disaster. I'm talking about number 1, budgeting. Number 2, emergency savings. Number 3, debt planning. Number 4, insurance planning. Number 5, tax planning. Number 6, wealth planning. And number 7, estate planning. You can go to my website, pocketwatcher.net, and learn more about the Pocket Watcher 7 money rules. And if you need help creating that budget, if you need help creating your debt payoff plan, you can go to the same website, pocketwatcher.net, and sign up for the free Pocket Watcher app. This is your opportunity to create your budget, see where your money is going, and direct it to where it needs to be. You can also list all of your debts inside of the app. Press a button and come up with a manageable debt payoff plan. It is all free. It's all in the app. Go to pocketwatcher.net. And if you have a money question for the Pocket Watcher, go to pocketwatcher.net, click the Ask JT button, fill out the form, and when I get time, I do the best I can to get you an answer. And of course, if there is a celebrity or influencer who has filed for bankruptcy and you have no idea how they ended up in that situation, put their name down in the comments of this video. Trust me, I am always adding people to the list. Put their name down in the comments of this video, and when I get time, I do the best I can to get you a video. Thanks for watching.
Are you looking for real financial advice? Thornton Financial is here to help. Certified Financial Planner Jayson Thornton specializes in tax and wealth planning. Are you living paycheck to paycheck with no retirement plan? Do you need help with the IRS? Book your free consultation with Thornton Financial today. Budgeting, savings, debt management, and retirement. Even tax debt settlements. Get the advice you need to live your best life. Book your free consultation appointment today. Go to www.thornton-financial.com.